Now, live from CNS Channel 6, political, legislative, economics, and current affairs. Welcome to Facing the Nation with the leader of the opposition.
Pleasant Friday afternoon to you, Guyana. Welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation with the leader of the opposition. It is Friday, August the 27th, 2021, and I will be your host for another hour, and no stranger to you, the viewers here in TV land. The name is Annette Ferguson. So once again, welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation with the leader of the opposition. Well, there is no guest, nor do I have the leader of the opposition here with me this afternoon. But on today's program, I will be discussing with a focus on the agriculture sector, with specific emphasis on Gaisuku and the PPPC's promises to reopen estates and also the 10 billion flood relief disbursements. But before I get into the actual topical issues for discussions, I want to let you, our viewers and listeners, know that 15 minutes just before program time, I will open up the telephone lines so that you can call in and express matters or issues that might be of concerns to you at the individual level, at your community level, or at the national level. So that being said, I want to start off by sharing with you what is happening with regards to the COVID situation here in our nation. You will agree with me that COVID has been with us for over a year now, and not only here in Guyana, but also globally. The pandemic would have affected many nations, whether developed or undeveloped nations. But today, here in Guyana, we have, as at last evening and a little of Thursday's evening stats, this is what we have. Home isolation, 1,465 persons are at home isolated. Active cases, 1,573. Cases in the ICU, 23 persons thus far. It might have increased between last night early into this morning. New cases, we have 207 new cases. Confirmed cases, as at last night, it was 24,713. So, this figure might change a bit. The deaths now stands at 606 persons would have lost their lives. So I've just provided you with, an overview in the various areas with regards to the COVID situation here in Guyana. And you will agree with me from the figures shared that nothing differently is happening. Our numbers whether in deaths, whether in confirmed cases, whether in home isolation, for those who are hospitalized or in the ICU, the numbers are not, one, static or stagnant, but they're increasing on a daily basis. I think just last evening, you had over 100 plus persons who would have been infected just for yesterday alone. So what is this saying to us? It is saying to us that those who are currently manning the affairs of our nation, they're incompetent, they're inept, they're visionless, and there's no plan to tackle the COVID situation here in Guyana. And if I'm to make a parallel analysis of what they inherited from the coalition August 2nd, 2020, is that the numbers were just 21 in deaths and 474 confirmed cases. And if we're to do the subtraction, you would see exactly how the numbers have increased exponentially since their 1 year in government. The first case was discovered in March of 2020. And at that time, the APNU-AFC was in government. And we started to put systems, structures, plans in place to ensure that the lives of our people were protected. Because we would have experienced what the developed countries were actually confronted with. And the APNU-AFC administration, we decided, what? There is need for us to separate the primary health patients from, those persons who might have contracted the COVID-19 virus. So we had the reconfiguration of the Ocean View International Hotel, which was actually converted as a disease center to, have those persons with COVID virus placed in that institution. And we were beaten left, right, and center. But if we're to really juxtapose as to what is really happening today, that facility really came into good use, because those who are now in the seat of governance, they're actually utilizing that facility. So my viewers, I say all of this to say to you, the coalition had a better plan. And I think previous programs, I have been sharing with you the draft public health plan, which we designed in May 2020, to cater for, one, the whole public health crisis that COVID would have brought, and how we were going to deal with, the other plan was how we were going to deal with the COVID after it, after it is addressed. Outside of that, what we were also able to do was to have a task force established. And that task force had, technical staff from across ministries, whether Ministry of Public Infrastructure as it was then, Ministry of Communities as it was then, the Ministry of Public Security as it was then, Ministry of Public Health as it was then, the regional democratic organs, they were all involved. Even, personnel from various civic society organizations. So all of these things we had running. And we had also extended an invitation to the then leader of the opposition for them to come on board so that we can fight this virus collectively and not an APNU or AFC coalition fight. But they refused. So you had the task force then headed by former Prime Minister Mr. Moses Nagamootoo, who met with his team on a daily basis. And the nation, you were informed of the workings of that body. But you know what? Now we have a task force. There is no opposition representative on that task force. The task force is headed by Mr. Mark Phillips, who perhaps don't even have a clue of what his role or responsibilities are. We don't know who comprised this task force because we don't hear from the task force. So the COVID situation it has gotten out of control. And it is as a result of this bunch of people who just perhaps don't know head from foot or vice versa. So what we're seeing happening at the moment is that they have started to roll out the whole vaccination program, which we in the opposition, we have absolutely no issue or no trouble with the vaccination. But the trouble came when we discovered in the National Assembly, when we were considering about 2 financial papers, and both financial papers had requests for monies, one that was already spent and through the contingency funds, and then the other financial paper was actually monies to be spent on the procurement of vaccines via the Ministry of Health. So what we did, we started to ask hardcore questions because the nation was not being kept informed as to what is really happening. Okay, these are the types of vaccines we will procure at this cost. These are the likely consequences or the effects or after effects these vaccines would cause. But what we have now is the imposition of mandatory vaccines on our people. Without providing the necessary information. So you're actually trying to impose on our people without giving them the necessary know-how and understanding of these vaccines. So this is what is happening. And I must let you, the viewers, know that it might have been earlier this year. I'm trying to remember if it was February or March of 2021. Political parties were invited, for a consultation on the vaccine rollout. I represented the PNCR, myself and Dr. Karen Cummins. You had Mr. Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan, he represented the AFC, and then you had, those subsets from the smaller political parties. And, we put suggestions to the government. This is what we think you should do in order to get the trust and the confidence of our citizens in taking these vaccines. Because they realized, the regime realized that persons were not taking the vaccines because of, due to hesitancy. But persons can only be hesitant because of them not being educated or of them not being advised properly. So what you find happening is that because of them not reaching the expected percentage, because I think they were looking to have 80% of the population vaccinated. But because of what we discovered in the National Assembly caused many people not to, go and get vaccinated. They've started to say that we in the opposition, we have been, conducting whisper campaign, and that has caused persons not to come and, or go get vaccinated and all manner of things. That is far from the truth. We are on record saying that we support vaccination, but it is the choice of the citizen to make that decision. I have taken my 2 jabs. I took the Sputnik V. And this is way before the whole blow up in the National Assembly. So I don't know if I got a fake jab or fake jabs. I don't know what is in my body. But, I did the honorable thing as a leader, set the example. But because of what was discovered, this is why we were having the high hesitancy. So now that you're not getting persons to, turn up in their large numbers to be vaccinated, you've now imposed mandatory vaccination. And if persons don't want to go and take the vaccines, whether Sputnik V, and we know that there's an issue with the Sputnik V. One, it's not WHO approved. Two, they have started to vaccinate persons with the Sputnik, and to date, there's shortage in the Sputnik V vaccine. So, mandatory vaccine now is being imposed on our citizens. That's not the way to go. And if persons don't want to take the vaccines, you're now asking public servants who earns a minimum wage of $70,000, thank God for the APNU AFC government. We made that possible, for the minimum wage to be $70,000, because when we came in 2015, the minimum wage was just under 40,000 Ghana dollars, 39,000 and change. That was the minimum wage in 2015. And less than 5 years, the government then, the APNU AFC government, brought the minimum wage to $70,000. So this is what you're having. So if the employees refuse to take the vaccines, you're now asking them to do the PCR test. And we know that the PCR test has a lifespan or a period. So every week, public servants gotta find $25,000 every week to go and have that PCR test done. You are the employer, and it is enshrined in the health laws or the regulations, the health regulations, that I, as an employer, if I'm asking my employee to take the PCR test, then I have to bear that cost. The employer must bear that cost. So you're asking a man or woman who earns $70,000 a month to take a PCR test which costs $25,000 a week, and in some cases 1 month has 4 weeks. So you multiply 25,000 by 4. It's 100,000, way past the minimum wage. So this is unfair. So rather than you working on a strategy, rather than you working on a way forward, how we can, meet the demands of our populace, you're coming with this high-handed approach. It will not work. It cannot work. The people of this nation is not your children, PPP. They're citizens of this land. And as a responsible administration, as a responsible government, as a government, and though you're installed, that is seeking to promote oneness, you must be able to find common grounds to meet your people. Take a page from Mia Motley's book. Mayor Motley in Barbados attempted to impose mandatory vaccine on Bajans. But they weren't having it. The Bajans weren't having it. So what she did, she backpedaled and she said she's going to consult with her people because she don't want COVID to divide Bajans. She wants Bajans to be united. So they've put a cessation on this whole mandatory approach there in Barbados. And they're now going to work with their populace to educate them. Let them know, well, look, if you don't want it, we wouldn't force you. If you have underlying issues, these are the effects that you're likely to endure. But no, the PPP here in Guyana feels that Guyanese, whatever you can shove to Guyanese, we will swallow it as a poison pill. No way, you wouldn't have it, PPP. And we in the opposition. We stand with our citizens. We stand with our public servants. We stand with those who are fighting against mandatory vaccination. As I said earlier, we are not against vaccination, but we are against you imposing mandatory vaccination on our people. So I want to encourage the installed regime to review your backward policy and come better. Then we have the situation with schools to be reopened on the 6th of September 2021. Now tell me this. The numbers, they're not static. Their numbers, they're not stagnant. They continue to increase every single day. And rather than you working on a plan to ensure that we have continuous learning, whether if not in the classroom for now, but virtually, this is what the government will seek to do. Have proper internet accessibility in far-flung areas. Help the people there in Agricola. Help the children in Buxton. Help those who are living in South Georgetown. Help those young lads in Tiger Bay. Help those young people in Enmore who are at a disadvantage. How can we meet you? Many children don't have laptop, they don't have a tablet, they don't have a smartphone. I had the opportunity of visiting communities on the east coast of Demerara, in South Georgetown, in Region 6, Region 2, and the people are complaining bitterly. Parents have been complaining. I have one smartphone and I got 3 children I'm sending to school, and this is how they gotta share that one cell phone. And I know many families cannot afford a monthly plan. So rather than the government partnering with Digicel or GT&T to ensure that, internet is made accessible across this region. No, you want children to go back into the school, into the classroom. At whose risk? At whose risk? At whose expense? Because if that child falls sick, who is to be blamed? The government will not accept liability. You will not accept liability. It is the parent of that child who will have to bear the high cost in health care. So the numbers are increasing. We have heard about the new variant, either the Delta variant, which has been probably traversing in this country, which is very serious or deadlier. But you're not sensitizing the general mass. So everything is a hush-hush. Everything is a hush-hush and a pad up for you, PPP. So there are many children. You have those who are disabled, those who are at a disadvantage, probably, dumb and all kind of things. How are you going to deal with those children to get them back into the classroom? How are you going to deal with those little toddlers, those little 5-year in the nursery category? How are you dealing with them? Children don't stay one place. It's children whenever you finish. So they're always moving. They're always energetic. So you can't ask them to sit one place for the entire hour. So I am calling on this installed regime to review your policies, though they're not written. It's just, plucked out from the air. You need to review your approach in the handling and the management of this COVID situation in our country. You need to remember that many of our adults, or whether, children too, they have underlying issues. People who have been diagnosed with diabetes, and diabetes come in different types or different stages. People who were diagnosed with cancer, people who are, and we know cancer, that comes in different stages too. People who are hypertensive. People who got other issues, health issues. So I am calling on this regime to review this whole approach in dealing with COVID. COVID is real. COVID has taken many lives. And the time has come for you to manage the affairs. This particular pandemic in a more meaningful way, in a more consultative way. Have persons participate, get views from us in the opposition, because we know how to manage the affairs of this country. We know how to manage the health care in this country. Yes, we in the APNU AFC, because from March to August 2020, we only had 21 deaths. And we can speak to our record of performance. But you got 3 ministers sitting there. 3 persons who served as ministers. You got one who is currently the Minister of Health, and you have 2 as his advisors who were former ministers, Berry Ramsaran and Mr. Leslie Ramsamy. So, Guyanese, our country is in a terrible state. And we have to continue to pray for our families. We are the ones who have to ensure that we protect the lives of ourselves, our families, our friends, and our communities, because this regime has no interest in protecting your lives. So we would always say, it is your choice, it is your decision to make, whether you will take the vaccine or not. But in the meantime, what we will say, and what we have been saying and will continue to say, is that you ensure you wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your distances. Right? So that is it for the COVID situation. And I will now turn my attention to the agriculture sector. And my brothers and sisters, you will agree with me that all the sectors are in trouble. All the sectors, whether public works, whether the health, well, I just highlighted, what is happening in the health there, whether in the human services and social security, whether labor, all the sectors is in serious trouble. All. Because why? We have an incompetent regime that has no plan, has no policy, has no strategy to improve the sectors. They said they could have done the job better than us. Well, they were installed on the 2nd of August. And have they done anything differently to improve the lives of the Guyanese citizen, to improve the operations of these sectors? No. The only thing that they have done differently is to dismiss people, is to bring trump-up charges against people, and got people running at the courts every single day, and to discriminate against people, to victimize against people. That's the only thing they have done. So what is happening in the agriculture sector? They promised, just 2 weeks ago, they celebrated 1 year in office. They promised that they were going to open up the sugar estates that we closed. Well, I guess Mr. Zulfikar is yet to report to this nation, is yet to report to the Gaisuku or the sugar workers what they have done so far in order to, commence the so-called opening of these estates. I had the privilege of being on the quarantine a few weeks ago, and I have persons, I know of persons who are employed in the sugar industry. And you know what the person said to me? All these things that these people reported, they just keep fooling us. They haven't done nothing in the agriculture sector for the sugar workers. Nothing. I said, well, you see, y'all wouldn't know what is happening, what they're saying to us in Georgetown. But I'm happy that you're providing me with this sort of information. So, they like to boast, and I want to refer to a press statement coming out from the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, but because of time constraint, I will not attempt to read the entire press statement. But what I will seek to do is to highlight some misinformation, and I will, and disinformation. And the press statement actually emanated after the anti-racism march or rally there in New York, of which several of my colleagues had the opportunity, of exposing some of the atrocities, the wrongdoings by this regime since August 2nd, 2020. So in an attempt to put the opposition, the APNU AFC, in a bad light, this is what this press statement is saying here. It's dated August 24th, 2021. The misinformation and race baiting advanced by the APNU AFC coalition. Well, this is what the press statement, remember I said to you it's a very lengthy press statement, so I wouldn't attempt to read the entire thing. But this is what it has. The correspondence documented instances. Well, this press statement is actually speaking to a 28-page document, 28 pages document that the administration, the regime was able to compile and share with, international organization, highlighting some of the deficiencies or the so-called deficiencies of the APNU AFC. And this is what they said here. In 2016, the coalition closed one sugar estate, and in the second year, 2 more, throwing 7,000 sugar workers, majority of whom were Indo-Guyanese, out of work, and impacting over a quarter of the population and reducing foreign currency earnings to the country. Now, yes, we did close estates, and we give valid reasons. There was a COI a commission of inquiry that was done in 2015 by the APNU AFC government to, find out what are some of the setbacks, what are some of the constraints and the challenges within the sugar industry. And I can tell you, the findings were voluminous. And, 1 hour program cannot really detail what those findings are. But as Guyanese, these matters of national importance, you must be able to have an urge, or you must be eager enough to read and be informed, rather than you hearing it from the politicians or national leaders. So the COI reports, their volumes 1 and 2, they were laid in the National Assembly. And I guess there are copies, the very copies which were laid. You would be able to find it in the library of the National Assembly. And I would encourage you to visit the parliamentary library, so that you can read, because it's a public document of which you, the ordinary citizen, can go to the library of the parliament buildings there and, read up on what the findings of the report are. But we did not send home 7,000 sugar workers, and I'm going to challenge the People's Progressive Party regime to put the figures out there. The number of persons that were laid off, that were paid severance pay and all other terminal benefits, it was less than 5,000. It's 4,000, might have been 4,100 something, but I'll get my figures accurate. But it's less than 5,000 sugar workers who were actually sent home. Because why? Sugar is not doing well. And all Guyana is fully aware of it. The entire world is fully aware of it. Sugar is not doing well. So what a caring government did in 2015, 2016, we had a white paper laid in the National Assembly. And we said, you know what? The time has come for us to right-size the sugar industry, because it is the responsibility of the management board of directors there at Daisuku to ensure that the cooperation is profitable. Profitable means they're going to earn on their own, take care of their operating expenses, their administrative expenses, and all the other expenses. And rather than relying on the coffers of the consolidated funds. So they said that 7,000 sugar workers we sent home. My brothers and sisters, viewers out there, I have before me here an article dated this 15th of February 2020. And this is what the headline reads: PPP left sugar in ruins. PPP left sugar in ruins. And this was perspectives given by both Joey Jagan, who is an offspring of the late Chedi Jagan and Janet Jagan, and also former Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo. But before I go to some parts of the article, I want to remind you, the viewers, and also to remind the People's Progressive Party Civic, that while you are saying to this government, saying to the population, are trying to demonize the APNU AFC for the actions taken, you're not saying to the Guyanese public that you, on the Barra Jagdeo, 2 estates were closed. Who closed LBI in 2010? Who closed Diamond? It wasn't the APNU or AFC government. It wasn't the PNC. It wasn't the AFC as political parties. But you don't want to tell Guyanese what you did. And the 5,000 plus sugar workers that were affected and who had to be represented by Mr. Moses Nagamootoo in order for them to get their severance pay, in order for them to get their terminal benefits. But no, what the APNU AFC did was bad. But what you did was good. This is the type of people we have there in the People's Progressive Party Civic. So, quickly, the article has several subheads. And one subhead reads, PPP ignored warning. And this is speaking specifically to the white elephant there at Skeldon. The white elephant there at Skeldon, which never produced the intended tons of sugar it was actually built to produce. But taxpayers are still paying for a failed sugar factory out at the Skeldon estate there. The other one, don't be used as political football. And this is Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu reminding sugar workers that the People's Progressive Party Civic only use the sugar workers for their political gains, for voting purposes. And when they finish with you, you're kicked to the curb. And this is what Prime Minister Nagamutu was saying when he was addressing the sugar workers. The reason he was sharing, the reason for the coalition taking making the decisions to have the estates closed was as a result of as I said before, us right-siding the industry. But this is what he said. We were going to, have portion of lands made available to those who worked on the estates, and they would have had an opportunity to create small businesses such as fishing and doing whether cash crop farming or rice harvesting with whatever use they would have want to utilize the lands for. And this, he went on to state further, some were also given plots of land to farm, while some were employed in other sections and departments in the Ministry of Agriculture. So not all sugar workers were sent home. You had those who opted for the severance, and those who decided that they were going to stay on. So they were replaced in other areas. Government, the Prime Minister said, is also working with plans that are doable and reasonable. Here it is. Since Guy Suko still has a debt of 85 billion Guyana dollars. A debt of 85 billion Guyana dollars. But these things the PPP wouldn't tell you. They wouldn't tell you. And Joy Jagan, let me now move on to what Joy Jagan had to say. Nothing in 23 years. And this is what Joy Jagan said. Jagan addressed the issue of the sugar industry and the many promises that the PPP is currently making to revive the industry during an interview with political activists. He was on a Mark Benchcup program. And this is what Joey said, and I'm quoting him here. My father, the great Chedi Jagan, always told me that you should always be truthful to the people. Truthful to the people. Always keep close to the people. Mr. Jagdeo is far away from the truth. It's not, we are aware of this. And far away from the people. When he talks about the sugar industry, Jagdeo doesn't have any concerns. Jagdeo does not have any concerns for the sugar workers. He just wants them to vote for him. This is what the son of the late Chedi Jagan said when they met sometime in 2020 when he appeared on a Mark Benchcup program. So I want to continue quickly by saying this. When the PPPC was ousted from government in 2015, the Ghana Sugar Corporation Gaisuku was operating at a loss. The corporation was operating at a loss. You don't think Jagdio is fully aware of this? You don't think Zulfikar is fully aware of this? But you heard what Joey said. You know, what I've just alluded to, what Joey said. Is that as leaders, we must be truthful to our people. But the promise is that we're going to open back the sugar estates because sugar got a future. And we know that sugar don't have a future. So, yes. So, was operating at a loss with billions in government subventions being pumped into the industry annually to sustain its operations. Gaisuku and the sugar industry didn't become bankrupt when the coalition came to government. Gaisuku had been bankrupt for years now. This didn't just happen recently. They were bankrupt all the time. And what did they? And this is Jagon still speaking. And what they did, they referring to the PPPC government. What did they do? They brought in a man called Raj Singh from New York. Raj Singh is a fake. He runs back to New York. This is what Joey Jagon said. So, to date, we're yet to hear. The sugar workers are yet to know where's this plan for the reopening of the Skeldon sugar factory and all the Wales sugar factory and the other two. Where is your plan? Guyanese viewers, listeners, the People's Progressive Party Civic don't have a plan. The People's Progressive Party Civic don't have the cares for the sugar workers at their hearts. So this is what is happening in the agriculture sector. The other issue, because of time, I will, try to wrap up quickly here. The other point I want to discuss briefly is the $10 billion that the parliament approved. $10 billion of taxpayers' money. Not $10 billion of PPPC monies from the bank accounts. $10 billion from the consolidated funds. It is your monies that are currently being used to disburse, to help farmers, to help those who might have lost whether cash crop, whether poultry during the flood that we faced earlier this year. Across this nation, we're being told that lists were compiled with names of persons who really lost huge sums of money on their farms. But what we have seen, or what has been reported to us, that a lot of skullduggery, a lot of corruption is taking place with this whole disbursement. So it's a family affairs. You've seen it all on the Facebook. You've seen different ones complaining what is happening. But this is the same play card or the same playbook that we experienced during the 25,000 COVID rollout, where many persons who should have benefited, to date, they have not. Many persons are yet to be serviced. They still have pink slips waiting. And this is the same thing that is happening. Many communities are being disadvantaged. Many communities are being victimized. Many communities are being discriminated Because why? These people behaving as though this $10 billion or the 7 point how much billion they have started to roll out in various regions, coming from the coffers of the People's Progressive Party Civic. This is taxpayers' money, and as a result of taxpayers' money, it must be accounted for. We must have transparency. And we know the PPP, they don't like accountability and they don't like transparency. Because we're yet to know, we're yet to hear from the Auditor General what is happening or what has happened with the 25,000 disbursement as the COVID relief funds. So we are in a serious dilemma here in this country. Communities are discriminated. Regions are being discriminated. Families are being divided. Because why? This cabal we have as a regime in office, they don't believe in unity. They don't believe in social cohesion. We would have seen what they did with the Ministry of Social Cohesion. They got rid of that department because it is not in their DNA to see Guyana unite as one people. Guyana unite as one people. What makes us one people? It is Guyanese that makes us one people. Where do we live? What makes us a nation? Guyana makes us a nation. And that common destiny, we all have that destiny to see Guyana blossom, to see Guyana develop, to see Guyana prosper, so that each and every one of us will enjoy that good life. The mantra always preached by the APNU AFC, a good life for all Guyanese. We must never forget that particular phrase, a good life for all Guyanese. A tagline by the APNU AFC government. So my brothers and sisters, time has caught up with us. And I want to say to you, not to lose hope. Don't be discouraged. Don't be fearful. A fear has transcended over this land. Because we have to stand against those oppressors. We have to stand against those dictators. We must stand against authoritarian. We must not be bullied, and we should not be bullied. And I always like to refer to this scripture taken in 2 Timothy 1:7. God did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us one of power, love, and of a sound mind. And I'm saying to you, Guyana, the time has come for us to stand against fear and stand up to our oppressors. Speak out. That is you're protected by the Constitution to speak out. Freedom of speech. But they won't control what we say and what we shouldn't say. Well, they wouldn't control me, because I am not mentally retarded. I am not mentally retarded. Or none of my colleagues in the opposition, we're not mentally retarded. We went to renowned universities. We have our papers that we can show. not fake, real thing. So I'm saying to each and every one of us, let's stand together. Let's work together so that we can move our country in the right direction. Guyana belongs to all of us, and we must have a say in the decision making of our nation. So, my brothers and sisters, this is all the time I have on this program, Across the Waves. Do join me next week for another edition of Facing the Nation. So with that being said, I want to say to you, enjoy the remaining of your day. Whatever you do out there, ensure safety is paramount. Do enjoy your weekend. I look forward to rejoining you next week for another program of Facing the Nation with the leader of the opposition. May God bless you, may God bless our nation, and may God continue to bless your family. Thank you very much.